Hey, I'm Scott with HHA Sports, and in this video we're going to show you how to sight in your optimizer Tetra as well as key in on some of the features of the Tetra that differentiate it from some of the other optimizer sights. So you'll notice I have two different Tetras in my hand. We have the original optimizer Tetra, which was new for 2018, and then we have the optimizer Tetra Tournament Edition, which was new for 2019. So in this video, the setup process is going to be the same for either one. The only difference between the two is basically from your third axis bracket back. You just have the two different mounting brackets, so a fixed frame and a dovetail, and we'll kind of talk about the differences between those two later on. The first step to sighting in your Tetra is finding your 20-yard mark. And this process is a little different compared to our other sights. So if you've used any of our other optimizer sights, this is kind of unique to the Tetra. Finding your 20-yard mark is by far probably the most crucial part of the sight-in process, because your 20-yard mark is what sets everything off of that. So if your 20-yard mark isn't where it needs to be or isn't accurate, it's going to screw everything else up later on. So really focus on finding your 20-yard mark. The first step is going to be adjusting your slide or the scope housing. So that's one of the big differences between the Tetra, is it's got its own proprietary front end to where the scope housing doesn't actually bolt onto the frame from the side, but instead it's in an infinite adjust channel where it'll slide up and down. So you're going to start with your yardage wheel at 0 and adjust your 20-yard mark using the scope housing itself. So you're not going to touch the dial to sight in 20 unless you absolutely have to, because the whole goal is to have your 20-yard mark as close to 0 as possible. So we're going to fine-tune our 20-yard mark just by sliding the scope housing up and down in the channel, and you'll notice your second axis bracket is actually part of the scope housing slide. So we're going to focus on that later. But first, we're going to find the 20-yard mark just by sliding the scope housing up and down in the infinite adjust channel. So once we found our 20-yard mark, now we're going to find our 60-yard mark. And to do that, we're going to adjust the actual yardage dial now. So we found our 20-yard mark just by adjusting the scope housing. Now we're actually going to use our dial to find our 60-yard mark. So if you go back in 10-yard increments, and you get to 60 yards, let's say your 60-yard mark ends up being 45 on your setup tape. So then you go to your yardage tapes, which come with every sight, and they're all pre-printed. You're going to find tape number 45, peel that off the card, and you're going to take your 60-yard mark on your yardage tape and match it up with your 60-yard mark on the setup tape, which was 45. So you're putting mark 60 on your yardage tape over the top of mark 45 on your setup tape. Once the tape is wrapped around the wheel, you'll find a small piece of Mylar clear tape in your yardage tape packet. And you're going to take that piece of Mylar, and that just connects the two ends of the yardage tape to ensure that doesn't peel off. Once that's completed, now you have your sight sighted in from 20 all the way out to 100 by the individual yard.